So this is a good time to get into the Black Wall Street Report, talk about money, talk about how to make our wallets just a little bit bigger in 2019. And here to talk about it is former investment banker and the founder of Kids Who Bank. It's a really dope organization that has financial literacy classes for young people in 137 schools nationwide. Please give your attention to the super talented, super intelligent Jatali B. What's going on, lady?
Cheers. I just got back from Australia
Wow.
and
Okay.
my voice is just now coming back.
Oh, wow. Australia. So you were there for what?
An organization called AIM reached out to me. It's Australian Indigenous Mentorship Experience. And they basically were having their first ever beta event where they were going to invite mentors from around the US
Hmm.
and mentees from around the US and Africa, as well as the Indigenous people from Australia. Indigenous meaning the Black people of Australia from the different, Aborigine backgrounds to come out, and we basically would do mentorship, discuss financial literacy and important factors that are affecting Black people from around the world.
Wow. Well, Real Black News just picked up some listeners in Australia. I was surprised. I was like, what is Black people in Australia? But we forget about the Aborigines. So shout
Yeah.
to the Real Black News listeners out there on that continent. Welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. So what are we talking about today, Jatali, fresh from Australia, from the Outback?
So today I want to discuss investing in communities which benefit people of the African diasporas worldwide,
Nice.
including our brothers and sisters in Australia.
Okay.
So I think it's very important. Sometimes we forget that our brothers and sisters around the world are going through things, such as in Australia, they had the stolen generation. So in the 70s and 60s, which was just the other day in our lifetime, there were white people who were raping the Black women and, children, and taking the white looking children, which had green eyes and blonde hair, and putting them to live with white families in foster homes and other parts of Australia, from like Wollongong to like Sydney and things of that nature. So I say that story to say this. Sometimes we don't realize that these could be our brothers and sisters, and we have been affected around the world. And it's time that we get back. And it's time that we invest in these communities and help our people out. So, investing one, just for an example, I always go back to real estate, but around the world, it's something that is a universal language. And in Australia, one of the things I noticed in the news very heavy was them discussing their concern with the decrease of about 6% as of right now within the last 2 years in real estate prices. So the government was going to decrease the prices even more. And they were concerned with how many Asians were purchasing properties in Australia.
Asians are purchasing property all over the world. China, the Chinese.
Ooh, let me tell you, yes, and it's predominantly Chinese people who were there.
Hmm.
They were discussing it in the newspaper as well. They called out the demographic, and they were saying that for other demographics that want to move to Australia, they were trying to lower and work out things that they can do to get more demographics into Australia, which is interesting. They went through this
Wow.
phase where they're killing all of our Black people. Now they're basically asking for diversity.
Mm.
So that was one. And then two, I noticed that in the stock business out there are about 2,000 companies in the stock market, and I would say maybe half of them are about zero, above zero in revenue. So if you really want to monitor the stock market out there and invest out there, this is a good time to look at those companies and see, hey, what do they hold and why are they not above zero in revenue? So some of those companies, when I was looking, I noticed that they were companies that purchase prime real estate in areas that were like near the beach and areas like that that they feel like are going to eventually start to get developed. And these are long term, that would be a long term purchase.
So let me ask you this. So if someone isn't obviously Australian and I go
Mhm.
there and you're talking about, the rampant racism, I mean, there's rampant racism all over the world. So I go there. I mean, obviously, I would need to know someone there to be able to invest in the market there, being that I'm not familiar with that country. Correct?
Yes,
I mean, this goes for any country.
this goes for any country. One thing I noticed is kind of like we were talking about Ghana last week, and the president made the comment about this is the year of the return, and he wants our African American brothers and sisters to return home. When I was in Australia, that was something that was the consensus is that the Indigenous and Aborigine people, they want our Black communities to help them rebuild. And I feel like There so much opportunity there. It's not for the weak at heart. This is something that, because due to racism, that you must keep in mind what you're getting yourselves into. You're in a location where predominantly white people, and then when you do find other Aborigines, they're now rebuilding their communities and they're now becoming vocal. This is a situation where up until recent in the 2000s, only 10,000 of them have graduated from college because
Wow.
for a long time they were kind of shunned upon for going to college.
Well, how many? Only 10,000? How many are there?
In the statistic that I was watching and what I was learning, it said 700,000 Aborigines and only 10,000 of them have graduated.
What the hell is going in 2019?
And if there's an Aborigine or Indigenous person
Wow.
from Australia that's listening to this and that statistic is wrong, please feel free to reach out and let us know. But that's what I was taught. And when I was Googling it, those are the kind of statistics that I was coming up with. And
What
it was
the
mind-baffling.
hell? Yes, realblacknewsonline@gmail.com, because sometimes they put false statistics out there
Yes,
to create a false perception of what the truth
yes.
is. All right, so you're talking about investing. What other tips do you have? And also, there will be those who are listening and will say, and of course we talk about investing in different places, and investing in Africa. Reverend Jesse Jackson was on last week talking about that. And you've also talked about investing in different places in Africa. Now we're talking about Australia, but there are also communities here in the US. I mean, but then there's that other side where, man, they treat us so bad, but this is home for many. So what about investing here?
I think it's so important, and it's something that I teach my students when I go into the classroom. They complain about gentrification, and I say that gentrification is just someone else of a different demographic believing in your community when you didn't believe in it. So I really implore people.
I don't know if I agree with that bullshit. Not calling what you said bullshit, but you know what I think about gentrification? I don't think it's because we didn't care about, some of us didn't care about our communities, but there are always people in their community who care about the community. It's the systemic setup that doesn't care about the community until somebody of, like you say, a lighter persuasion or white folks move in. And then because white is equated with value, then there's value that's added to that community. So I would hope, Jatali, that you wouldn't communicate it like that and putting the blame on us for
No,
gentrification, because that's bullshit, because it's racism. Racism is the root of gentrification
it is.
and cleaned up communities and better security and all that. It's bullshit.
How many times, but let me ask you a question at that same point. When we discuss it with our kids, we go into it. We have the whole full conversation because I do a real estate course with the kids and we have a full conversation. A lot of times we've seen where somebody makes money, they make, let's say, $1 million, or they hit the lotto, or they've worked hard and they made $400,000. And the first thing that they choose to do in a lot of situations is leave where they live in the communities that they live in, especially if it's like an urban area or a neighborhood that is predominantly Black.
Yes.
They go and purchase in a more affluent, quote unquote, neighborhood that is usually predominantly white, once in a while mixed. Or, you sometimes have a once in a blue when you have a sprinkle, like when you go to Atlanta and you
Mm-hmm.
see some of the communities in Atlanta, you see some very affluent Black neighborhoods.
Yes.
But a lot of times we'll notice that when people of color, Black people, African Americans, make a certain amount of money and they can leave, the first thing they do is leave or invest in stores and storefronts and businesses outside of their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed this?
I mean, I do think that some people actually do that, but there are those in the community that work to stay and work to build up the community. There are so many homeowners in, for lack of better words, Brooklyn or Bed-Stuy that are not leaving, that are staying. But then there are still those same Black owners who have sold out to white homeowners. And now many of them are having a hard time losing their homes. So I think there's blame on both sides.
Oh, no.
I just would like there to be a balanced discussion about it. And I don't like us to always blame ourselves for where we are, because there are serious systemic things that are made to keep us
Even
down
down
and back.
to hoodwinked out of their homes. We had a conversation about that before with people in real estate where these people come in the guise of trying to help them, and next thing you know, they're
Mm-hmm.
losing their homes.
Right.
There is a lot. So the blame can't be on one particular sect, but I do definitely discuss the importance of our youth knowing that they should invest home. And that's also how we can end the note, I would say, for investing in our own communities, in our own backyard. It's important. Don't just take your money and run to an affluent neighborhood and not see the value in necessarily where you live. Don't get me wrong. Yes, you might live in a place that you don't want to raise your children, and that's respectable. I understand. But if you have an option to invest in a store or a restaurant, a healthy food restaurant, or something that can benefit your neighborhood or a place that you came from, and the people who don't have the option of leaving, I push you and I implore you to do so. It's so
Okay.
important. And it's not just here. Think outside of the box. And that's why I mentioned Australia. It's like we have, like, especially in places like Wollongong, Aboriginals and Indigenous people around the world who are of African descent that identify as Black, and they want to unify and they want to unite. So, it's that time.
All
Our
right.
dollars have a bang. So it's time that we put those dollars together and start retaking back as much as we can.
All right. That's Jatali B with the Black Wall Street Report. Jatali, where can people follow you and get more information?
They can follow me at www.kids2bank.com or Instagram at kids2bank and social media wise, and then info@kids2bank.com if you want to send me an email. And, of course, once again, if there's something that you don't like or something that you heard, feel free to reach out, definitely. Because I definitely did a lot of research, and it's something that, from documentaries to everything, what I experienced when I was physically there, it's just interesting times. And I really would love to see our people unite.
Very nice. Keep traveling, Jatali. And thanks for bringing that information back. It's great.